Welcome to AWFS Uncut, where we have real, unfiltered conversations about what's happening in the woodworking industry. In today's episode, AWFS's Tovi Spero talks with Kelly Burke of Burke Architectural Millwork about an apprenticeship program Kelly developed for the woodworking industry. You'll hear how the program came together, what it took to get it approved by the U.S. Department of Labor as a registered apprenticeship, and why that designation is important for the apprentice. Kelly also shares what she's working on next, including a second apprenticeship program she's developing with several industry associations and other partners. One quick note before we get into the conversation: you may notice a few audio inconsistencies due to buffering in the original recording. We've cleaned those up as much as possible. So let's hear from Tovi and Kelly.
Hi, everybody. I am Kelly Victor-Burke, and I am the co-founder and co-owner of Burke Architectural Millwork, and also a division which is Burke Bespoke Design and Build. And we're located outside of Detroit in the community of Livonia, Michigan. And we have been in business since 2016, so this is our 10th anniversary year. And it's been real interesting and incredible to be a part of the wood manufacturing industry.
And I definitely want to dive into, the work that you've done around apprenticeships and how that's really integrated into industry and bridging that gap, because that's really important to me personally, right? Is how do we bring together students, with education, with the workforce, and really try to encourage more people to pursue careers. So I know in the past you've already worked on and had approved an apprenticeship. If you want to tell me a little bit more about it in detail.
Sure. So as you were saying, yes, I am an educator. I just found a different classroom after 30 years of teaching at Eastern Michigan University, where I was in the very different from my world today. I was in the Department of Geography and Geology, and my areas of specialization was not only being a cultural geographer, but also I was in charge of tourism and historic preservation. So that HP connection is the only very thin strand that connects me to where I am now in my business. But I will tell you, as a fellow educator, that it's just the difference in classrooms and that commitment to fostering educational opportunities is something that I really, from the day that we decided that we were going to establish our own company, we said this was going to be important. So, my husband is the master craftsman. What did I bring, right?
You bring a lot. You bring a lot. But yeah, so I know that, for a long time, you've been very involved in developing apprenticeships, and you already have one under your belt that you actually got approved by the federal government. So I'm just curious about, how did that start for you? What was the genesis of that journey, and how did it go? Like, what was that process like to really get that through a really, really tough hurdle of really getting anything through the government these days? So that now we have something on the books for an apprenticeship.
Right. Well, when we decided that we were going to open our own company, we said that workforce development was going to be just as important as crafting the finest architectural millwork. So right off the bat, we were coming into this as a very different kind of position of a company. And we said at first, to be honest, anything to do with the government, myself and my very vocal husband, who is my business partner, was like, no way. So at first we said, okay, we were going to offer up in-house apprenticeships. So an in-house apprenticeship was the essence of basically on-the-job training. I have my business partner, Barry, who is an extraordinarily talented craftsperson who is just like a superhero, like so many of us in this industry. And I thought, okay, here's a great opportunity for people who are entering into the world of work to be able to learn. That whole part about learning, again, I'm so connected to it. And the best I could get from him was like, okay, well, see if somebody from the high school could come in will say that they're our in-house apprentice. And so it sounded really good. However, we have in our community, like I'm sure all of you that are listening, there are community colleges that are very focused on the bridge between what they're teaching and jobs, that pathway, which is more, I think, called out than what I observed in 30 years of teaching at a university. So one day I had the women who were from the manufacturing program who were in charge of apprenticeships, Department of Labor apprenticeships. They were the apprenticeship coordinators for the college. They came to see me and I listened to them. And at first my husband was like, no way, just get them out the door. But they came back. They kept coming back, and what they were telling me, as someone who can see the value, right, of and to see the translation between my students at Eastern Michigan University, they were on the journey to get a degree, a college degree,
Right.
bachelor's, master's, PhD, and then going to work. So in the conversations, when I learned that, number one, the government doesn't have anything to do and doesn't care about what, and they're not telling you what you have to do and how to do it in the registered apprenticeship arena, was very like an aha moment. Then when I learned that all registered apprenticeships have a credential that's attached to it, I was like, oh, this sounds like a degree, right? And that again, that these registered apprenticeships are vetted by industry, that are customized specifically for each individual company that adopts an apprenticeship. So my attitude was completely changed when I was finished with hearing what they had to tell me about the value of embracing a registered apprenticeship for your company.
Yeah, and and correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't have as much experience with this area. But what I've been saying to students when I interact with them, and whether that's a career fair, whatever it is, something like that, a conference with school counselors or something like that, is, and obviously there's something wrong with going to college and getting a degree, but it's not the path for everybody. Maybe they don't feel like it's the right path. And of course, that also typically comes with a lot of debt, right? And a lot of loans. And so what I tell students is, I mean, yeah, you can get a job right out of high school, right? I mean, we all know in our industry that we really, really need labor and skilled labor. But if you really want to be, like you said, a crafts person, if you want to have the expertise, if you want to start at a higher wage, well, yes, going and taking classes, getting a certificate, getting a degree from a community college is one way to do that. Unfortunately, I don't think there's a ton of really hyper-specific degrees for us in our industry, not all over the place. Or you can make money at the same time and get that credential, which is like a degree. And either way, that really proves to an employer, I know how to do this. And apprenticeship even more so because you've been working on the job doing it, right? So I think that to a lot of employers, that feels even more valuable.
Absolutely. And when we started the discussion, it was about 2018, and I can tell you that now, 8 years later, apprenticeship has just completely changed in terms of this momentum of trying to create through registered apprenticeship a pathway, a meaningful pathway with something at the end, this credential that is portable, that follows that individual for the rest of their work life. And so when we first started the conversation, they were the ones who brought us and introduced to a gentleman by the name of Logan, who was hanging out and was interested in them coming to see us because he had been following us on social media and was like, I would love to work there. Can you give them my resume? And they were like, sure. So I say that Logan was the real impetus to starting the apprenticeship, because when he came to work for us, he was actually planning to finish his basic studies at the community college and then transfer to a 4-year university for him to get a bachelor's in mechanical engineering. But when he came to work for us, he really loved it so much. He said, listen, I'll stay at your company, but you have to put me in a registered apprenticeship. So that was the part of the journey that was extremely interesting, because you know what, Tovi, there was nothing out there that existed on the books that in any way, shape, or form not only would benefit or be attractive, not only for Logan, but for, I think, really anybody else interested in our industry. And you know why? Because so when we were saying, okay, let's get Logan into a registered apprenticeship, so we started looking, what could we place him in? So, you know, we found out that the drafting apprenticeship was created in the 70s and was based on drafting on paper. Like,
Yeah, right.
you know, it's that kind of antiquated kind of thing. So, of course, there was a cabinet making existing. There actually was a CNC apprenticeship that was not very long in its length, but there were like bits and pieces. And there was also the part about stuff being antiquated. So when we actually started investigating this, it was clear that there wasn't anything out there that we thought was good enough. And so that's when Karen and Pamela from Schoolcraft Community College, they said, listen, if there isn't anything, then you can write one. And never tell that to an educator, right, Tovi?
Oh yeah.
So they're like, you can write one, but understand that it's for the Department of Labor in the federal government, and it not only has to be something that would meet your needs, but it has to be for all other that could be, you know, this apprenticeship isn't for Burke Architectural Millwork, it's
Right.
for any woods
Whole industry, yeah.
across the country. So
Yeah. So I just want to ask then, I know that for construction as an example, right, the unions are that kind of unifying, body that runs apprenticeships, and it's not to individual companies, but, what advice would you give to whether it's a millwork business or some other wood product manufacturing business, if they wanted to do this, what are some of the basic steps that they would have to take? Because obviously you have that template that's ready for them.
yes.
But if, XYZ Millwork, in Florida or whatever wants to do this, what does that take? Where would they look for apprentices? How long does it take? Is it a timed thing? Is it based on the skills? So just kind of like a little overview of that.
Absolutely. So yes. So if we fast forward, it took 3 years, and working with a lot of other millwork companies on what exactly they needed, because again, this wasn't just for my company. And then working with workforce development agencies and with local community college or educational centers is how we were able to get the DOL approval for the Woodwork Manufacturing Specialist Apprenticeship. So it is a combination of CAD, for someone who's working in AutoCAD or for any of the CAD-based software. It is mechatronics, your CNCs, edge banding, any kind of machine that uses that 4.0 technology. And then the apprenticeship is involving with cabinet making and panel processing. And then another component is finishing and then estimating and project management. So it's multi-skilled. Each one informs the other to a greater degree. And so that's what this apprenticeship is. And so to your question, for anyone who is interested in learning more about registered apprenticeships, I always say that those companies need to make relationships with a local educational center, because that is where they are going to find their own apprenticeship coordinator who can assist them. Another avenue that I always tell companies that they need to go down is to have a relationship with your workforce development agency, because they also are involved in registered apprenticeship. And so between the relationships with your educational centers and your workforce development agencies, they're going to cut through the red tape and make it so that you are able to learn about what's available. Because I just have to throw out, Tovi, we are talking about the federal government here.
Absolutely.
And that when it comes to the way that apprenticeships are run in our country, is that it's not all the same. So there are some states that are DOL states, and those states like Michigan are those that if an apprenticeship is approved by the Department of Labor, then a business can adopt it. Just as simple as meeting with your coordinators and customizing it to exactly what works for your company. And it's very straightforward. Then there are those states that are state apprenticeship states. And that is where, even if it is approved by the DOL, the state does not recognize them. And that you can have the framework of what is the Woodwork Manufacturing Specialist Apprenticeship, but they can take it and they can make you go through a lot of different hoops. Or some states are like, hey, this is a good framework, let's just work on it, and then we'll make it so that you can adopt it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, I won't say 100% sure, I'm pretty sure California is that latter example. And that's because of my experience of trying to support, because our offices are in Orange County, California, supporting the Orange County Department of Education in reaching out to employers and getting people to sign up for apprenticeships with those businesses. And it is a whole process. And I'm actually really glad you brought up that there are people out there, there are organizations out there like those, educational centers that can do some of that lifting for a business. You don't have to do the whole thing by yourself, and really you shouldn't, right? I'm telling a lot of local industry people, it's like, let the Orange County Department of Ed, let them help you find people, let them help you do the paperwork, focus on what you need. And yeah, and I love that you mentioned that it's customizable, right? The apprenticeship itself is, I mean, you're really covering like anything that could be in a typical wood product manufacturing business, but which is great because then people can decide what to specialize in afterwards because they have that experience. But when I ask, besides the customization, is it a set amount of time, like construction trades where, X number of years?
That is a great question. So when we were writing the framework for the Woodwork Manufacturing Specialist Apprenticeship, we were told that the DOL is moving away from time-based apprenticeship models to those that are competency-based. And look at, as someone who, we both have been in the classroom, just because a student sits in your class for a semester doesn't mean that they get it, right? And so that's speaking to the change that I've seen in the last 8 years in the DOL and Office of Apprenticeship is this, I think this competency-based consideration and this model actually works, especially in our industry, because let's face it, if you can't build a cabinet that's square, then that's a problem. You shouldn't be able to get your credential and not be able to be competent in all of these different things. And so for the Woodwork Manufacturing Specialist Apprenticeship, we say that it should take between 3 to 4 years. Because again, so for us, the way that we look at that apprenticeship is we need every one of those different components, and it takes time to be able to produce shop drawings that are accurate enough. Again, the CNC seems to be, in my experience, the CNC and learning about the CNC is pretty straightforward. But, we're asking our apprentices to go much above it. And, I think shop drawings are very, very complex. The whole panel processing, the cabinet building, and all of the other kinds of things that we build as a very artisan shop. It's like that old master, being able to learn those techniques. And then to me, project management. And don't get me going about finishing. There's so many things for us as an architectural millwork company that can make or break a project. Again, why do I love this industry that I find myself in after I have completed my work life at a university? Why do I find it so interesting and compelling is because it literally is like Survivor every single day. We're doing, these cabinets that have these huge arches on them. I mean, this is not just your standard cabinet that we're doing. And then the finishing part that can make or break. If you have, your pre-cat or post-cat, paint, if something goes wrong with your spray gun, I mean, that just, there's bubbles in the finish. That just is almost heart-stopping. And then there's the whole installation. I have to tell you, I am so impressed by a perfect installation. I mean, where like my husband is out installing on a project, and he and one of our employees, they were out until 11 o'clock at night doing stuff on the ceiling. And I'm just at home and I wake up and, they're not back yet. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, but the attitude, oh yeah, we got it done. And it was really, I'm tired and, but we got it done. This is stuff that takes time to learn.
So that kind of brings up what, I know you and I have discussed, besides this, which is you are working on a new apprenticeship related to installation. So I know because that's in process, I also kind of want to ask a little bit about the process, but what do you envision that this new apprenticeship is going to entail? And I guess I want to ask where are you in that step in getting it approved?
So in early spring of last year, my wonderful colleague, Mark Smith, who many of us in this industry know who he is, an educator who is now retired. So watch out, world. Educators, once we've gotten out of the classroom, we're just busting to go back in a different way. And so Mark has been pivotal in his role with the Woodwork Manufacturing Specialist Apprenticeship and writing that framework. So he's out there with me, and we are consulting with companies and help and teaching them about the benefits of registered apprenticeship. So he got connected with the New Jersey Department of Labor, and they are the ones who approached him and said, listen, we have so much requests from our businesses in New Jersey for an installation apprenticeship. Do you think that you could write one? And so we said, absolutely. And so that was the starting gun for us. And what took 3 years for the first apprenticeship, we were able to get in front of the DOL in a matter of months. And that was with the collaboration with AWI and with others who really I felt was so important. This installation component was taken from the Woodwork Manufacturing Specialist Apprenticeship and really promoted. And we made this as really the lead for this new apprenticeship. Our advisory group thought it was important that some of what the other apprenticeship had, like, can you read a tape measure? Just the fundamentals of the other apprenticeship would be brought back in for the new apprenticeship. And that, of course, makes a lot of sense, right? Like, you have to know cabinet building if you're installing. And so I think it's really a victory because we had the support of so many people like your organization. Like I said, AWI, the Cabinet Makers Association, the Association of Closet and Storage Professionals, the Woodwork Career Alliance, Woodworking Network. I mean, so many organizations said, listen, we're gonna support this. And so we were able to get a framework written, and it has been at the DOL since early winter of last
Okay.
year.
So it's just been a few months, but no, it's great to hear that it's much more accelerated. And I guess that's, testament to you have experience doing it. And I'm sure you also have connections already at the DOL for trying to expedite something like this. Again, maybe it's an obvious question, my lack of experience, but this wouldn't be in addition to woodwork manufacturing specialist. I mean, I guess someone could if they really wanted to, but it's really, you can do either or, and you're getting the same kind of very basic fundamentals, but you're really specializing.
Yes, yes. And I also would be remiss, Toby, if I didn't talk about the intermediary who has been so important to the registered apprenticeship journey for me, and that is Jobs for the Future. So Jobs for the Future is an intermediary for the Department of Labor and apprenticeships. And I started working with the woods manufacturing person who is Becky Caldwell, that then ended up getting then a new person who is Brent Wheel. And Brent has been the person who has really coalesced all of this and that made it into the form that could get presented to the DOL. And so that is another avenue that, again, any businesses that are interested in finding out more about apprenticeship and need that assistance, that you're absolutely right, Toby. It's a complicated thing. And so it's imperative that we owners and people that might work for companies where that HR person is directed to
Hiring, yeah.
hiring for apprenticeships is to reach out to intermediaries like Jobs for the Future, because I'm telling you that having someone who can cut through red tape makes all the difference.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing I want to again stress is, it's not something that any business has to do by themselves, right? It does take a village, and there are people out there that can support you. I guess one other question I want to ask, on behalf of businesses, because I know I've heard this a lot, is what does this cost? Right? I mean, they say, okay, yeah, we're trying to hire, we need this person, but what is that going to cost me? Is this expensive? All this paperwork, all that kind of stuff.
The good thing is that it costs companies nothing to adopt an apprenticeship. In fact, that if you're able to work with outstanding intermediaries, which I tell you, if you are, and any of them that we've mentioned today, then these people are passionate and they know what they're doing. And so their assistance costs you nothing. And as far as the apprenticeship model, registered apprenticeship has two parts to it. It has on-the-job training, and then it has required technical instruction. Again, you are, and your company is in the driver's seat for how you adopt it and what you are exactly going to customize that apprenticeship to include. So again, everybody I think understands on-the-job training. That's where you are teaching and mentoring that apprentice. They are your full-time employee. And then the required technical instruction can be given, or you can have it at places like your community colleges. It could be online. It could be where you have a machine where, and again, I'm just using styles. I'm not promoting them, but I can say that they have their Styles University. So there's a lot of different ways, and please forgive and the many others that I have not mentioned that are required technical instruction providers. But this is after work. And this, the good thing about this, and this was the big thing for me, we're a small company, we don't have a lot of money. And I was in a university and I saw how expensive that classes in a university are. So when I thought about required technical instruction, I thought, how are we going to be able to pay for our apprentice to actually take these classes? It was like, there's no way. Well, you do not have to pay for the classes that your apprentice has to take. You can, as a company, pay for the classes, but you do not necessarily have to. But on the other hand, I'll tell you, we did not pay, but what we did do is we were connected to all kinds of scholarships. And so our apprentices have gotten so much money through getting scholarships that it more than paid for the cost of their classes for required technical instruction.
So it really sounds like, in terms of cost, it's really just they're your employee, and so you're paying them. And of course, I'm sure at a reasonable wage, because they are not yet skilled, they are not yet certified. So, but that's really good to know that, is it required that they take some kind of classes, some kind of educational component? Yes, it is, but is it required that you pay for it? Not necessarily, right? It's an option. And I know that there are resources. And again, I'll use our local example in Orange County. They have state and federal money that is meant to support businesses, and not necessarily to pay a wage to the apprentice, but maybe buy them, steel-toed boots or whatever, PPE, like that kind of stuff. And there are grants out there, and there are scholarships out there for students to be able to take classes. And of course, we both know, if it's not a university, a community college, much, much less expensive, right? Just to begin with. So having them take a CAD class, CNC class, something like that, I'm sure is much, much more reasonable. Well, wonderful. Kelly, before we go, I wanted to ask, is there anything else that you want to highlight? I mean, I want to definitely give a mention that I know there's a lot of information on your website, resources, which we'll link to this. But yeah, if you have anything else that you want to share with the industry about it.
Yeah, so currently our website is being refreshed. And so, in honor of our 10th anniversary, we decided that we were going to redo our website. So, currently, it's just a landing page. So, if anyone is interested in finding out more information, they can email me directly at Kelly, Kelly, at burkemillwork.com. BURKEMIWWORK.com.
Yeah. And we'll
And
and we'll
so,
link that too. Yeah.
yes, yes.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then I know we also have information like the websites with Department of Labor where you can actually look at the woodwork manufacturing specialist apprenticeship so you can kind of see everything that's inside of that. I know particularly important when you go and speak to your local educational institution or organization is that ONET code, ONET, right? So that they can look it up and they know, okay, this is exactly the one that we're looking at and not a different one. So we can definitely provide all of those in the notes for this episode. But yeah, well, Kelly, thank you so much for taking the time. I know obviously you're extremely passionate about this and you've done so much work and it's work not even just for your company, it's work for the whole industry. And that is what it takes. So I feel like you're a champion of woodworking because you're really trying to grow the whole industry and not just, what can I do in my business, in my sphere. And I think that's the kind of thing that we need a lot more of. So I really appreciate you.
You are so welcome. And thank you.
All right. Thanks, Kelly. Talk soon.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
That was Kelly Burke of Burke Architectural Millwork in conversation with AWFS's Tovi Spero. Kelly's experience is a great example of how collaboration between employers, industry organizations, and other partners can help create stronger apprenticeship opportunities for the woodworking industry. Thanks for listening to AWFS Uncut. Be sure to subscribe, share, and let us know the guests you'd like to hear from in future episodes. And stay connected with us at awfs.org for more AWFS programs, resources, and industry updates. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.